talk some shit to myself. Get my head straight. Check it. I am the best, at least it's what I tell myself. Whether you agree or not is how I should address myself. Mr. Spitfire, I ain't gonna doubt myself. I'm a hit writer, that's just how I build myself. Build my wealth, rearrange the blocks, change the circuitry, upgrade myself. I'm taking on new challenges, I break myself. I'm overcoming change, I embrace myself. Plane can crash anytime soon, I brace myself.
Where did the name Xenai come from? Does it have to do with your last name a little bit?
It does have to do with my last name, Shenoy. But it's also like, it's meant to be a crossover between East and West for me. Because I've always felt like a third culture kid. I've never felt like I could fully identify with one side of my upbringing or like the other side, you know, like being born and raised here in Bahrain, it's like I can't be Bahraini, but when I go back to India I still feel like I'm a foreigner there, you know?
Yeah.
So I've never really felt like I was singularly identified with one culture or one kind of thing. So that kind of helped me, I don't know, it didn't help me initially. So then I was just like, okay, let me just like do what I do, but then from where I am, it's like very culturally ambiguous, you know, I feel a little bit lost sometimes. But Xenai is like, in the East, X is mostly pronounced as Sh, you know, like, actually Shenoy has a derivation of the name called Xenai, which is Xenai.
Right.
But in the West, you have X as Z, xylophone, right?
Yeah.
So if you mix the two sounds, you get Je, like bonjour.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if you listen to Lecrae,
Yeah.
but his album Anomaly, the story behind it was how he was a Christian, but then he was passionate about hip hop. So he felt like a little bit of an anomaly where, you know, he had all these Christian values, but then there were all these hardcore hip hop values as well, and what the hip hop culture was about. So he was like somewhere in between, where he didn't feel fully Christian and neither did he feel fully hip hop. So he was somewhere in between. So I think your story would be very similar.
It would be similar that way. If you say it that way, definitely.
Yeah, right.
You know?
So, but interesting enough, hip hop seems to be something about self-identity, right? You need to know who you are. You can't be the next guy. You know, you need to be very original and authentic.
Yeah.
How did, you know, not really identifying with one part of your culture or your ancestry, how did that play into whole hip hop culture of it?
I think that the fact that I didn't identify is what made me identify with something.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The fact that I cannot identify with this and this and this kind of makes me understand, like, okay, if I'm not that, then that's the identity.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I know a lot of people over here who've pretty much grown up in this country don't really fully feel identified with the culture that they're originally from.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my friends, whether they're from India or they're from Philippines or they're from, they're very strong in their roots, and some of them, like, you know, are very, very traditional with their family and everything, but they still feel this ambiguous cultural, like, you know, sort of inadequacy. It was like, oh, am I really this? Because like I know my friends, like my family back home, are more identified with them. They know the land better than I do, or something like that.
So when you first said, right, I had like, you had a problem with identifying yourself, but doing research for this interview, I was listening to a lot of your stuff, and I heard a lot of food references, like traditional food references. So that was very, very interesting for me.
Which song are you talking about?
I think it was your freestyles, which you did. Like you do freestyles on your Instagram.
Yes.
Yes.
I think you're talking about Maggie or something.
Probably, you know, not exactly just Maggie, right? It was like, I think you used caboose, curry, and all that. So
yeah, definitely. I think that's the way I can identify with the culture, because growing up here, you know, my Indian parents would cook Indian food and everything, but then I grew up on shawarma and cheese caboose and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, karak chai and all that stuff. So I think food was definitely a good point for me to feel like, okay, I think I can relate with you guys on this. So let's see what else I can relate.
Right. So from my understanding, you studied here in Bahrain and then you moved to the US to pursue your higher education.
Yeah.
You were at Berkeley.
Yes.
So you actually have a very interesting upbringing, because your dad was a percussionist, if I'm not mistaken.
Not professional.
Right.
He was, you know, in the financial sector, working as a consultant and everything. But music was definitely alive in the family growing up with him, and he used to play the harmonium, he'd play the tabla, he'd sing, and his brothers would play tabla, they play harmonium, they play kanjira and everything in the temples. And so I think that's where I get a lot of the musical influence from, as well as from my mom's side, because her dad is a veena player, and he played in competitions in Bangalore. So
Right. So did you know it from the start that it's music for you? Is that why you went to Berkeley?
not at all. I had no idea until, music was always there, and I always loved it, and I always felt like, okay, this is a way I can express myself. When I was angry, I used to be into metal at the time, and I could let out my angst and all this energy, singing along to Slipknot songs and stuff. And then I joined a band, Adam and Eve, in Indian school.
I've never done that.
You've never heard of that? Okay, so I joined one of the bands over there, two best friends of mine. And I think playing my first show, I was their vocalist, and it was at BIC. They had this music festival called Reflex, and it was like full. It was like 700 people were there, and I've never played a show live before. I'd never even stood in front of a crowd like that before. But for some reason, it felt so natural to me at the time. So that really got me going, and then I started producing music. When I started producing music, my dad was like, okay, he has potential. Maybe he can do this. So that's when I kind of decided, last minute, because I was initially going to get into architecture. And then I switched from architecture to industrial design. I got like an offer from Pratt on industrial design, product design kind of thing. And then I was like, you know what, I just have to do this. I have to go for music.
Right.
Yeah.
What was Berkeley like?
It was amazing. It was intense, definitely intense. I was a big fish in a small pond kind of here, But when I went to Berkeley, it was like a huge smackdown. It was like a slap in the face, because I was like, okay, every talented person is here, and they're way more talented than I am. So like, what do I have? Then I started like doubting myself. I had a little bit, I went through a little phase, which kind of helped me grow at the time as well.
So all of a sudden you get this letter that you have to leave the US. How did how did you even take that in? And I have to ask you, at this point, did you have finished your course, or was this in the middle of finishing your course, or?
This was after I graduated.
Right.
I did my degrees and everything. I started working. I worked under a company as an assistant producer, under a mentor, and we would do like jingles and everything from Nissan, Shiseido. And then on the side, I started acting. I did like 4 or 5 short films, and I was just about to join an acting troupe to go touring nationally to different colleges and schools and do like skits, comedic skits on like sexual abuse, sexual consent, and all that kind of stuff. And then right before I was going to go to train for that, that's when I get this letter, and it was just it was like shattering, definitely. It was like reality just like completely pulled itself apart, and I was like, I didn't know anything from anything. I was like kind of lost my senses for a while. But luckily I had my family, and that was like the best thing that happened.
Who was the letter from?
From the government, obviously.
Right.
Immigration.
Right.
And this was a time when, Trump just got into office.
Okay.
And when they started detaining kids in the ICE detention centers?
Yeah.
ICE detention centers. That was when my visa was being processed. So the immigration officers had to leave their stations and go deal with that problem. So I think it was just a quick note. They didn't even read half of the stuff.
Right.
They like, for example, they say like my, the articles I had of my music in Gulf GDN or something. They said it had nothing to do with music when it was only talking about music.
Mm-hmm.
So they didn't even take time to look at it.
So, did you have like a plan out for like the next few years? Like, I'm imagining you graduated from Berkeley, you have a job going, you have acting going. So did you have like musical plans, acting plans, and planned out? Is that when this whole letter shattered apart?
Definitely.
Right.
So I thought my life was going somewhere, right? And I was just starting to play shows in Boston as Xenai. I was starting to play shows and feature with certain bands. Like there are these bands, these groups in Boston. Some of these artists, Lost Collective, Just Mac, G'day. These guys are like, you know, these guys kind of like put me onto the scene and stuff, and I started playing shows with them. Just then, that's when that happened.
So the music scene in America is it's the American music scene is basically the international music scene.
Pretty much.
Where
whatever they do, we do.
Yeah. Whereas in Bahrain, you know, I don't know if you've heard of Rista.
Yeah.
We were interviewing him last Saturday.
Okay.
This same spot actually, and you know we were asking him about the rap game, and so he's Bahraini, and how it was for him, how it is for him, you know, just coming up as an artist, and you know he just straight up just said there is no rap game here, there is no really music scene, right? Like the farthest we would go is just bring Obi Trice down here, D12 down here.
Yeah, he,
like
he actually performed in that show.
Yeah, and big ups to him, but you know.
Yeah.
As far as hip hop goes, the farthest we go is bringing like a bunch of artists who are hot in the 2000s and the mid 2000s go. So it's very difficult.
And then you have BIC with open Jason Derulo.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So
it's either like full on international acts or nothing.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's either like F1 or like
or
nothing at all. So how is it for you coming up in Bahrain as an artist? You know, it's a whole different ball game, whole different environment, whole different audience, and you know, just reaching out to a whole different culture.
Yeah, I think it makes you change your outlook.
Right.
I mean, your approach to the game, because usually traditional ways, like, you know, going out playing shows and everything, and getting your name out, putting your mixtapes, giving it to people, but that doesn't work over here, right? Because there's no scene. So the only thing you can do is build your online presence. And I've noticed, like, if you don't have enough followers on Instagram, people won't even like respond to your messages.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a little, I don't know, it's frustrating at times, but it gets better if you keep going. And I know there's something in me, I don't know if it's a sort of madness or something, but it tells me that, like, if your music really connects with people, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's gonna happen. You know, something or the other will happen. And yeah, it's slowly but surely it will happen.
Right. You mentioned your online presence. On the Daily has a line which says less time on social because you got the phone. So how does that work? Because pretty much, you know, even if you're not in Bahrain, it's all about how you are online.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you have 1 million followers, you're a real deal. If not, not really.
Exactly.
You know. So
when I was in Boston, I didn't spend that much time on the phone. I didn't put that much importance to social media. And when I came here, I realized how important it is. So I had to change, even though I don't like spending too much time, because it does sort of drain you mentally and emotionally. Especially if you're like, you are comparing yourself with like other things, and you're here in Bahrain and everything is happening, and all my friends are, you know, playing shows and stuff. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? But I had to get out of that. I had to use something that I didn't like, and I had to just do it anyway. You know? And now I'm slowly starting to enjoy it. It's okay. It's not something, I am not a pro, I'm not like an influencer, but I have to do what I have to do to get my music out there.
I noticed that you played a few gigs at some fundraisers and all that.
Yeah.
And, you did this gig where it only was like one BD entrance or something like that. So my whole point is, how do you draw the line between, okay, I need an immediate check versus this is a step in towards the end goal? How does
I think you're talking about this gig I did at Exchange?
Yes.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had to keep the price down, right? Because if no one knows about you and you're charging the standard rate, you'll be like, well, why do I have to come to see this guy? I don't even know his music. That's where you have to make a sacrifice, make a compromise, and be like, this is an investment towards my future self, towards my future success. So if I have to work for free and make no money right now, constantly work as hard as I can, I know it's going to pay off. And at some point I will be able to charge what I should be charging. But right now I know it's a sacrifice I have to make.
So your sound is very interesting because you play different instruments, you play the guitar, you play different string instruments, you know, just the whole on the daily instrumental just is very, very interesting because it has all these different sounds and these different elements. You know, you were speaking about your ancestry and what they have, the history they have in music. So where do you really like? What is your source for your sound? Like where do you really grasp it from?
When you say source, do you mean?
So, for example, NWA, they had a very hardcore sound because they had very hard circumstances,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Okay, so I think that comes back to when I produce music, when I make a song, it's solely and entirely based on what I'm feeling in the moment. On the daily was a sort of frustration that, like, you know, everything around me is just feeling stagnant, and the tone of the voice and everything, it was all kind of like a character. So every song I do is based on the feeling that I'm feeling currently. I realized that, you know, people tell me like, you know, you should focus and hone in on the sound that defines you, and that may happen naturally, and I think that is slowly starting to happen. I can see it, but when it comes to instrumentation and everything, I do it solely based on like the vibe of the song. Does it fit? I don't want to put oud in a song if it doesn't, just for the sake of putting oud, you know? So that's kind of like my thinking process behind it.
right. So I'm kind of trying to draw like a timeline of your life, right? So there's this point where you were in the US, you had your life planned out pretty much. Then there's a huge breakdown, right? Then I also was going through your Instagram and there was this post, I think it was for one of your music videos, where you were explaining how you didn't want to shoot a video until you had a DSLR, but a couple of your friends actually just told you to shoot it with your phone, and you should shot a video with your phone. So there's always this place where I feel like, I don't know if your faith in God is very deep, but if it is, I feel like, you know, God's just, you know, you have your entire life planned out. God's like, nah, this is Bahrain. Bahrain is the place for you.
Yeah.
Like, no, I need DSLR. Nah, just shoot it with your phone, you know.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about that? All that.
It doesn't really bring me down. Like it's, it actually feels like that I'm making. To think about it this way, it doesn't matter what equipment you have. If there's heart and soul in your music and you're very true to yourself, it will connect with people. Like all my songs have been recorded in my bedroom, mixed in my bedroom, and I still haven't bought the latest plugins or VSTs or instruments for my, you know, software, for my music, you know, Logic.
Yeah.
But I'm still doing it because I know that it has to work, in the sense that you're putting your heart and soul, and you will find sounds later on. You will be able to afford it later on. But I've noticed, because, for example, Soldier Boy. You know that Superman?
Yeah.
That was made in his bedroom. You can hear it in the bedroom. You can hear it's a demo. That blew up. Why did that blow up? It wasn't made in the studio. It wasn't mixed. It wasn't mastered properly. It sounded. Quality-wise, it's a really bad recording.
Yeah.
You know. But I think that's what life is teaching me right now. That it shouldn't matter what you have. What you do with what you have should make, like, you know, makes a difference.
Right. So who are your influences as far as hip hop goes? Like, who did you grow up on, and what was that point that you decided, okay, this is it, I want to do this as well?
When I started listening to hip hop, that was when I was like I was very young. I think I was like 7 or 8. You know, I started listening to Jay-Z, Eminem, and a little bit of Limp Bizkit. And then I got into heavy metal, and I hated hip hop for a long time. I was like, hip hop is all bullshit, you know, it's just too mainstream. It's all about, like, you know, the anger and the emotion that you feel. I was so into heavy metal at the time. And then I went to Berkeley, and Berkeley kind of opened up my vision on music. And I became a lot more open-minded, so I appreciated music in a much bigger sense. And I came back to Bahrain to visit some family friends. And one of my friends, she showed me Russ. And that just brought hip-hop back into my thing.
Right.
I'm actually wrong, so before that, I was started listening to Slum Village.
Okay.
Slum Village, Jay Dilla, Common, and then slowly a little bit of J. Cole, because I had some friends in Berkeley who showed me that.
Right.
That's when I was like, okay, hip hop is not what I thought it was. And
Right.
there are some people who are really talking some real shit, and there are people who can be, going for the mainstream but still bringing their conscious hip hop, like J. Cole. That's when I started really appreciating. It's like, okay, there are some people making a difference and making a change to the scene, and turning the tables.
Right.
That's when, and then I came back that same year, and my friend showed me Russ, and I was like, whoa, this guy's doing everything himself. He's like mixing, he's mastering, he's producing, he's writing, he's singing, he's performing. That was so inspiring. And I got so inspired, and each song I listened to, I was like, wow, like, why can't I do this? I want to be able to do it. So that's when it started.
Right. Would you consider yourself more of a lyricist, a guy who sits down and pens his words really and sharpens his writing game, or more of an MC, more of a guy who spits just straight up?
I think I definitely am trying to improve my lyrics, my lyricism, my wordplay, and all this, the skill of writing for writing towards whether it's a story, whether it's conscious, whether it's a message, whether it's just personally about myself. I want to be more clear about it. But I definitely say I wouldn't be called solely a rapper. I think I'm more of an artist.
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm still very musical. I'm still focusing on the sounds and the musical dynamic of how it's affecting and producing. And
how does you make a living out of doing classes, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Currently, I'm working part-time teaching.
Right. I don't know if you want that in an interview or if you don't.
You can put that in.
Yeah. So, how does managing your time between each aspect of your life, where you want to do music, that's your future, and then you also have to pay your bills currently, you also have to maintain good relationships with everybody, you also hustle yourself. So how does that work?
If you really want to do something, you'll find a way to do it, right? Something as simple as this. I mean, you yourself, you're doing something that's not really done in Bahrain, but you're going to make it happen. And you found a way to manage your time to do the things that you want to do. I told my boss that I can't do full time as a teacher because I have bigger plans. I have things that I have to do. I have to make music. I'm a songwriter. There's so many things I'm producing and projects going on. And it was very nice of her to understand. It was very, very cool that she let me do what I do. And she even said herself that, I understand that you may at one point be picked up maybe by a label, or you may be going out on tour, and that's completely fine by me. So she understands that. That was kind of a blessing, that I'm able to do that, and I'm only doing it part-time, so I get a lot of time to work on my music.
At this point, does music generate any income for you?
Currently, absolutely nothing.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Right.
I'd say cents if we were going to count Spotify plays right now, but I don't know. I have faith.
Yeah. So your parents sort of have faith in your musical ability.
They've become my biggest fans.
Right.
Yeah.
But what about hip hop? Were they very familiar with it? Did they have any skepticism going in?
Surprisingly, they were so supportive when I started doing hip hop. Right. Especially, I put out one of my first songs I did was "Come Chill with Me." Mm-hmm. My dad loved it. It's about drinking and smoking and stuff. But he was like, this is such a cool thing. I can see this happening. I can see you if you continue getting better at this. You could be on radio. You could be somewhere. And he has so much more faith in me than much earlier before. We doubted whether I could do it when I was going to Berkeley.
So let's talk about the whole label situation, the model label situation, right? We have dudes like Tech Nine, Hobson, Russ himself, Chance the Rapper, doing big things. I mean, Macklemore blew up independently, right? So there is this whole new market for independent rappers. But then again, right, all these Grammy nominations and all these awards and pretty much is, let's talk about plaques, right? Like the guys who go gold, the guys who go platinum, only like 10 to 5% of them are really independent. The rest of them are still under a label. I mean, these guys have really proven that you can do it independent. But how realistic is it to be independent? Now you're independent right now. I mean, so how realistic is it to be independent, and how open are you to being signed to a label?
I'm quite open to it. I obviously would like to have some leverage before I sign to a deal, you know, because most of these, you know, deals are sort of against the artist, especially when they are upcoming. But once you have leverage, if you have a fan base and you've put out enough music, and then you can call the shots. So if you can have enough of a fan base to be like, you know, I don't agree with this royalty percentage or this advance, then it's like it's a much better deal. But if you don't have anything, the label can easily be like, yo, you can have what we're giving you, or we're not going to sign you. And currently, it would be better to be independent if your music starts to pick up traction. And if I do it independently and something happens, then it's obviously, I've just proven to myself that I don't need a label, right? And if I do go through a label, it would be for distribution. It would be to get me on radio, get me, you know, appearances, radio stations, with show hosts and everything, and that would be what a label would help you with.
There is this whole situation, right, with you can either stay with the trends, you can either just break away from the trends and just come up with something completely original, like how the dudes in Chicago did with drill, or with trap, which came from Atlanta, and everybody started hopping on trap, and now there's UK drill, and so where do you stand in this whole spectrum, right? There's this thing where you can stick to strict hip-hop values of the authenticity, originality. Then there's this thing where labels and pop music, pretty much what they do is just whatever is hot, they try to hop on that bandwagon. Where do you stand in the spectrum?
Right in between, that's it. Because, yeah, we can go back to old school and be like, yo, this is what hip-hop truly was and stuff. And then you have the people who are like, yo, hip-hop is always changing, that's what hip-hop was. It's a conscious movement, you know? It's constantly evolving. Then you have that. And then you have the pop people, fully commercial, who are like, the only reason to make music would be to just, you know, sell it. If you have a good balance of these three things, then you will be a really good, you know, valued artist. In the sense that, yeah, you want to connect to people more than just selling it. You want people to connect to it, and a bigger audience would be not just because for the money, but just so that you can make a bigger difference in the world. And if you have your values or whatever you do, if you have your message and everything in your music, then all the better, right?
So does being a vocalist, an instrumentalist, a rapper, all these three does contribute to standing right in between?
Yes, definitely, 100%. Because if I wasn't and I was solely a rapper, I'd do what I could do. But because I have some skills in instruments and I'm able to make music, I'm able to, and also I have a different background. I wasn't in hip hop all my life, right? I have heavy metal and I have a little bit of Hindustani, a little bit of you know, traditional Arabic music that I learned from Berkeley actually, and then you know, new metal and different rock and stuff. So all of that has definitely contributed to me being a little more wide spectrum in music.
So you sort of like hip hop itself, because hip hop is ultimately a collection of many genres, right? Jazz, blues, R&B.
I like music.
Yeah. So how much does your faith or the religion or you mentioned that your dad played for the temple and all that, how much does that influence you? I also heard at the end of affirmations you go Om Namah Shivaya.
Yeah.
So how much does that influence you? And
I think it plays a big role. It's actually what I do before I make a song sometimes, or before I start writing, or after I make a song. Sometimes when you're just in the flow and you just do it. I always like Saraswati. I don't know if you know who
God of
Saraswati is.
music, yes.
Yeah, she's the goddess of music, of art, of wisdom, intelligence, and knowledge. So, in fact, I used to be quite devoted to her even before I went to Berkeley. I always knew that music, touched the deeper part of my soul. So I kind of owed it to her in a sense. So I pray to her all the time.
Are you familiar with Nav?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nav who?
The rapper from Canada.
Yes.
Right.
That Nav. Okay, because I have another friend who's Nav too.
Okay, right. So Nav actually did not show his face out because his team and him, they were afraid that a brown artist would not be accepted in the wide spectrum.
Uh-huh.
So he kept putting out audios. He didn't put out any videos until he had a very strong fan base who would be backing him just because of his sound and all that.
Sound.
Right.
Her did something similar.
Yeah.
Her did exactly that.
Exactly. So there is this threat of where a brown artist or artist out of America would not be really accepted. Now, grime music, I'm sure you're familiar with it, suffered with this for a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
Because early on, like Skepta and all these early on UK dudes, they would really rap in American accents, right? And then
I have no idea.
yeah, and it was such a problem where the UK audience didn't really connect to it, right? Because it wasn't really local.
Yeah.
And they would listen to the radio. One Direction is singing in American accents, and so it was not local for them until these dudes start putting on their Adidas tracksuits and they start really using the slang. And now there's a London subsidiary of grime, and there's a Birmingham subsidiary of grime, and so on. Right now, it's a very big movement right now, and Stormzy is pretty much a worldwide international artist right now.
Yeah.
So there was this huge process with identity that they suffered with until they got to that point. Now Nav kind of recognized that he might not be accepted for being a brown artist, so he played around it. Do you have any skepticisms involving this? Any fears that you might not be accepted?
Not at all. I know that if I'm just true to myself and I keep doing it, and especially now with the whole movement is there, people aren't solely blindly following white artists anymore, or specific race. People are a lot more open-minded, and I think something in me is telling me that it's a fresh perspective to have a third culture brown Indian dude who's rapping about Bahrain, on an international perspective kind of thing. Something tells me that it would kick off. If it doesn't, whatever. I'm still gonna keep doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if you follow battle rap very deeply, but I do, and I was very surprised to find out that the world's biggest battle rapper in terms of fame and popularity is actually Russian, and the world's biggest battle league is also Russian. This dude's name is Oxymoron, and hip hop is a pretty big thing in Russia. So these dudes actually pack 80,000, 100,000, 150,000 people a show, right? And American artists don't do that, right? So there was this whole Black TV interview, and when they were doing this whole comparison of the Russian audience, because they relate so much to what these guys are saying, and to show that really there is either this thing where, like grime, how they were trying to appeal to the international audience versus trying to appeal to your local audience. And with grime, what they did was, like early on they were trying to appeal to the international audience, but then they switched their games and they were like, screw the international audience, it's all about the local audience, and that paid off internationally. So how do you feel about this, or how do you think you can infuse this whole idea into your own brand?
They say, I think it's a big saying about if you can influence your own area when you go into your town, in your city, that's how you get international, because that's what NWA did.
Yeah.
They focus only on making music for their own, for content.
Yes.
And that blew up, because you are kind of giving back to the community here. Same for them. So that did play a big part in what I'm trying to do right now. But something just tells me that Bahrain is just not receptive right now towards hip hop. I'm still gonna keep putting music out from here, but I'm not just targeting Bahrain. I'm also targeting India at the same time.
Right.
You know, because Indians will be able to relate to some of the music,
Yeah.
and Bahrain also, people who are born and raised here will be able to relate. So like,
Yeah.
either of these two pick up, that'll be good enough because that's still my local audience because I identify with both.
Yeah. So what do you want from hip hop, the rap game? What do you want from it in the end?
In the sense of like, what do I want to achieve?
Yeah.
It's funny, I've never been asked that. What I want to achieve from this hip hop game, just my own independent success. I want to be able to have, you know, thousands of fans and everything. People following me for a reason because I inspire them to do what they want to do. So I think at the end of the day, I do want to inspire, not just people in my own circle, not just people in my own music circle or my fans, but also a bigger audience, just from what I'm doing, through acting, through rapping, making music, producing, etc.
What do you think you can contribute to the game?
A fresh new perspective, you know? Because I don't know that if you have a third culture Indian in the international game yet. I know there are some in India. There's this rapper called Hanuman Kind.
Okay.
He's an Indian who was pretty much born and raised in Texas,
Okay.
but now he's back. He's in Bangalore, and he's from Kerala. So he has that edge to him too, you know? And that might pick up really, really well. I think that it's still a fresh perspective because, first of all, Indians are everywhere,
Yeah.
right? So if you are able to connect to the Indian audience, you will be able to connect to them globally.
Right. 5 years from now, where would you be?
Wow. 5 years from now. Touring.
Worldwide tours.
Worldwide tours.
Right. So I was asking Rista about the Bahraini music scene, the Bahraini rap game, right? How open do you think Bahraini artists and the local Bahraini hip hop community, if there is one, is open? How open do you think they are to collab and to work together and to support each other? And
I think there just needs to be a platform.
right.
That's all that needs to be there. If there was a platform, everyone would be able to work with each other. But right now, it's too scattered.
Yeah.
Someone needs to bring them together.
Yeah.
And I think once that happens, hip hop is going to blow up in Bahrain. It's
Yeah.
going to be huge. Because right now, we're just having a very stagnant music scene. You know, you have the live bands pretty much playing the same music, and the people who are making the original music don't have a market here yet. They go abroad.
So there are these guys, you know, I'm sure you know the Outlaw label in Bahrain,
Yeah.
Flip, all those guys. So Rista was kind of telling me on how, I'm sorry if I'm speaking too much about him. He was telling me how he hates how commercial the game is really here. Like even the few artists that there are, they're trying to get very commercial, and you know they're really trying to appeal to the international Arab audience, but there isn't any locality to the music. You know, we were having a very interesting conversation about how there's so many interesting sounds in Bahrain. For example, the fishing community in Bahrain, they're based from Maharak, and their music is very interesting, and they have a very specific sound to it.
Yes.
And in Rifah, there's a whole other community, and they have a totally different sound. And the Iranian and Jordanian descendants who immigrated to Bahrain, they have a whole different sound, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these amazing sounds, but there's not really anybody putting them out there. Or maybe I'm just being too premature with this, because the scene is pretty young still. right? And it is a very tender scene.
And that is something I've had on my mind for some time, to incorporate that sound, shed light on them, you know, if I can, in my own way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with going commercial. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't hate it. I think it's completely right in their own way. But what you do with your success has to make some sort of impact, make some sort of difference. Right now I see that like it's like, you know, they're commercial and they're pretty successful, and like I do follow them, but I feel like they're kind of gatekeepers right now. They're not letting other artists through. They won't even listen to other people's music. Maybe they are. Maybe they're just like, oh, you know what? Like, we'll see how far this guy can go on his own and whatever it is, you know. Because they did, after all, bring in Abdullah Khanfate. Wow,
yeah.
right? So this gatekeeper thing, I'm not really a fan of. But what they're doing is perfectly fine in their own way. And what I really loved about Sada, you know, their album,
Yeah.
was honestly like it was it made me the happiest man alive when I first heard it, because I did it as a project in Berkeley. I
Okay.
played their album in my DJ class, and I was so happy because I could relate to every song, even though I couldn't understand most of the lyrics. I could relate to every sound, every you know, chorus, sambusa, ila. I could understand everything, and I felt it. I felt like, whoa, this is Bahrain, and I can really relate to it in my heart, even though I'm not Arab. So they are doing something. They are mixing the thing. If you hear the intro to that, you hear the local Bahraini traditional percussion.
Yeah.
So they are making a difference. They are doing that. It's just that we have to do a little more, but not so much if you want to get international recognition.
Right.
But that depends on you if you want to focus on the local or the international.
So if you could say anything to another up-and-coming artist, what would that be?
Anything to an up-and-coming artist. Find what you really, really love to do, and just stick by it, because it will transform you. It will change your personality. It will change you from the inside out in ways that you never thought you could have changed. So keep going for it, and success will come to you one way or the other. It will.
And finally, to anybody who's watching this, right, what if you could say something, right, something that you really want to say, or what is your message through your music, what would you say?
The same thing I said to the artist. To anyone in their life who is trying to achieve something in their life, don't ever think that it's not realistic. Don't ever think that. Because what is reality at the end of the day? Reality is perceived through our minds, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you want to achieve in life, whether it's in the arts or whether it's not, or whether it's outside or it's in a job or something, always know that if you truly want it and your heart is pure in its desire, you will get it. As cliche as that sounds,
Right.
like a fairy tale thing, but it's happened to me so far, because I never thought I could have, you know, acted. I never thought I could even dance. I didn't think I could even rap. I was so bad in, like, you know, creative writing. I didn't think I could rap or write. But just my passion for it has really fueled my drive to grow and learn and change.
Right. Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thanks.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It's been a while since you called me. My text messages looking super lonely.